Hi, my name is Eddie Santos. I'm a retired Army Sergeant with more than 23 years, and I am a disabled vet. I've been all over the place trying to get assistance for my disability. And as for right now, the only person that seemed to help me out was when I went to the congressman's office, tried to get some assistance for him to help me get my prosthetic leg fixed. So finally the congressman had me the opportunity to go to Palo Alto in San Jose, California, where they finally fixed my prosthetic. If you need help and you seem to not get it anywhere, you should go see our congressman with the people he has there to help us veterans get what we need and what we deserve for doing our time in service for the freedom of our island and for our country.
This ad was paid for with official funds from the office of Congressman Michael F.Q. San Nicolas.
A lot has changed overnight, but Buick and GMC's commitment to you remains the same. We understand you want to feel safe, so we're offering current owners complimentary OnStar Crisis Assist services. Should you need a vehicle, we're offering 0% financing for up to 84 months with deferred payment options for 120 days. Plus, you may have the option to shop online and take delivery at home. Visit our websites for the help you need.
Visit AutoSpot GMC today.
The Pampas
and elite wish we'd go away.
Because we are
real and direct.
No interest owns us.
And we have no interest but
the truth. Together we are exposing
corruption.
Together we will reform criminal justice.
Together
we are fighting violence
against women and children.
We here at
Kandit will shine the light
on every corner of darkness.
Together we are giving a voice
to the voiceless
and forgotten.
Stay lit.
Together.
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 Together
we are giving a voice to the voiceless and forgotten.
We are Kandit News Group.
I'm 2019. I just want all of the sailors in the USS TR to know that I'm thinking and praying for you. Thank you. Bye.
Hafidi, my name is Kai, and on behalf of the Island Cuisine family, I would like to send out a great big Undunkalu Nasi Ziwas Maasi. Thank you to all USS Theodore Roosevelt sailors for all that you do. We wish and send all prayers for a speedy recovery, and we will keep you all in our thoughts. Thank you for your service. God bless.
Hafide, my family and I extend our deepest condolences to the friends, family, shipmates of the USS Theodore Roosevelt, sailor who passed away recently. May we join the people of Guam in extending our prayers and our support, and may God continue to provide comfort and strength during this very difficult time. Sudus Masi.
Hafide, I'm Jim Moylan, and I want to extend my condolences to the family members and the loved ones of Chief Petty Officer Charles Tracker Jr., who had passed and was amongst those who tested positive for the coronavirus on the USS Theodore Roosevelt. I understand the hardship one experiences while serving our country. I appreciate the time and effort our military members put in to protect our country and her borders and the sacrifices they made, most especially at a time like this with the extremities of COVID-19, where we all are in a fight not many have experienced before. To all those affected by this, let's keep them in our thoughts and prayers. We are in this fight together, and we will weather this storm together. Stay safe and protected, and may God bless the sailors of the USS Theodore Roosevelt, and God bless Guam.
Environmental Health Division to do inspections, especially as we go forward?
Well, prior to the pandemic, there was a plan which we were seeking to increase the sanitary permit fee to reflect the needs of our division in conducting all the required inspections. But as a result of this current situation, I don't think that's feasible. So that's something I would have to refer up to our director for comment. But I know there was a plan, but I don't think that's no longer possible at this moment.
All right. I don't want to overkill this question, but is it possible to request additional funding from the allocation of the CARES Act to increase the inspection capacity of public health? Since we are relying on these businesses to conform to the protocol that you've listed, and we want to make sure that they are being safe. Is that possible or not?
I'll let the director answer that now.
Yeah, I know that these grants are specific that we've mentioned to you that have been funded, that I mentioned. There's nothing here for environmental health at this point in time. So based upon what I'm going to answer with the specificity of all these funding, I'm going to say that they're already allocated into the respective divisions. And Division of Environmental Health, as you know, is not federally funded. It's 100% locally funded.
All right, then Senator Lee, you had a question?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. This is for the director. Madam Director, you understand, even under the best of circumstances, the Division of Environmental Health is often saddled with many mandates being completed by too few employees. And now that we're getting ready for reopening of businesses, I want to know how Gov Guam is supporting DEH employees to handle these inspections of critical facilities that maybe haven't been maintained for more than a month now.
Right. Tom can provide more impact, but as far as we're concerned, we are getting them out there. And Tom, you want to say a few more as far as?
I'm primarily concerned about their safety being exposed to some of these facilities. So, yeah, if you could answer that.
Yeah, we've been always trying to recruit for more positions. And again, their position description is very specific. They have to have certification. So Tom can chime in as far as that's concerned. Of course, there's always a need for more.
Thanks, Tom. So the question is, how is Gov Guam supporting DEH employees to handle these inspections?
Well, historically, the division has always been underfunded, and we've never been able to meet our mandates. I've been working with the division for close to 30 years, and I don't recall a period when we had sufficient funding. It's just something that's been an ongoing issue with the division. And as the directors mentioned, we are almost 100% locally funded, so that alone is a challenge. Federal grants are available. They're competitive grants. They're limited and for a specific amount for a specific program. So we don't have the opportunity as my colleagues in other divisions, especially in the welfare and public health sectors. So we're basically challenged annually in terms of funding to recruit individuals.
Do you have the proper PPE to be able to handle these inspections of the facilities?
We followed CDC guidance. We're given the minimum PPEs. We do recognize our frontline workers, like our nurses, to get the necessary full PPEs. But we do follow CDC guidelines, so our staff are provided the minimum PPEs.
Okay, thank you. And Madam Chair, just one more question. JIC release number 114, which was released last night, referenced, and I'm quoting, industry-specific operational guidelines, procedures, and protocols in relation to the reopening of businesses under PCOR 2. And you had mentioned this in a previous question. The release said that these guidelines and protocols may be submitted via email. So my question to Linda is, you mentioned that these plans don't need to be approved, but what would happen in the event that a submitted SOP is insufficient in the department's mind to stop the spread of COVID? Does DPHSS retain any right to deny or modify these submitted SOPs? And which employees at DPHSS are charged with this process?
Yeah, that's a good question. Actually, that was what I was reading off from the question that you asked of those operational requirements that I mentioned and I answered earlier. In regards to if these criteria are not in place, the businesses will know that their plans are submitted, and our role is just to review them and then get information as far as how we can probably provide feedback in terms of letting them know that these core elements should be addressed.
Is the department working with GPD or any other government of Guam agency to identify whether or not, let's say, a mom and pop store opens, but they haven't submitted a plan to you, or a retail store opens and they haven't submitted a plan? Is there some kind of vetting, or is there another agency that's helping DPHSS to ensure that these plans are in fact submitted?
In regards to your first question, no, GPD is not going to be involved as far as what we know. As far as other agencies that are involved in the operational requirements, we do get input from, of course, GETCA, and they've been involved with us in this. And so as far as we're concerned, their plans are going to be uploaded into our website. And the Division of Environmental Health, we have identified several staff that can answer any questions that individuals may have when they submit their plans. But as far as other agencies involved, other than GETCA to help us through the road to recovery, they're also assisting us in the road to recovery. But as far as the anybody enforcing and finding, no, there's nothing of that with GPD in regards to your question.
Is there a phone number, or should the public just call 311 if they see a business that's open that they are concerned about not meeting proper protocol or guidelines? Could they continue to call 311?
Absolutely. The public can call any of our numbers, and they can even go online to our website, and there's in our website www.dphs.guam.gov, there's an area that they can ask any specific questions, and that question will be diverted to an employee of the department, and then that employee will send it to the appropriate division within our department.
Thank you very much, Suzus Masi.
Thank you. And Senator San Augustine, you have the floor. Senator San Augustine? Oh. I don't know. I was having some issues getting logged off also, so we'll come back to him. Senator Moylan?
Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair. A question for the director, please. I'm going to go back to our third bullet, section 3, 19502. It's just a follow-up question to Chairman's earlier question. But that section in chapter 19, it's 19502, it says specifically that the public health authority may exercise during this public health emergency, item A, and that's use of materials and facilities to procure by condemnation, otherwise construct or lease reasonable necessary items for the public emergency to include facilities. So I know you answered the chairperson's question, but just for my understanding, so you are not the public health authority then that deals with facilities for the COVID-19, like the hotels, all the different hotels. Is that correct?
I don't, I don't understand your question, I'm sorry.
Sure. So chapter 19, section 19502, it talks about access to control of facility and property. And it starts off by saying that the public health authority may exercise during this public health emergency. And then it goes into subject A, or item A, that the use of materials and facilities to immediately take possession or construct or even to lease a facility. Okay, so the chairperson's earlier question is regarding these lease of facilities. For example, the different buildings that we have for the those that are coming off the airplanes and staying there. So are you saying you relinquish that public health authority, or you're not the person dealing with the facility leases?
I'm not the person that deals with the facility leases in this particular COVID-19.
Wow. Okay. So another question then regarding, the anticipation of us going into our different COVID levels. We have a lot of families that still have loved ones in the mainland that are looking forward to coming home. At the same time, they don't really want to stay at certain facilities and be quarantined. And some of them are doing their best to get the testing done, but because of the lack of airlines and travel arrangements, that testing could be owed, because I think there's a 72-hour requirement. For our local families, is there something that are we more lenient with them? Is it a must that they stay in these facilities when they're, for example, the family is coming back home from school or has something to do here and then going to go back off island again? Can you please explain, are these conditions going to be reduced for those situations? They're not tourist.
Yeah, yes. I'll explain something that happened when we first started this whole isolation and quarantine facilities, because we wanted to make certain that those that are coming in from like the Philippines, especially that's how we started with all the infection was specifically with the Philippine passengers. We knew that we wanted to focus that the quarantine area, these are people coming in, they're coming in. We originally had it where they'll be self-quarantined. They have to sign a voluntary agreement. Now, if they live in Guam, of course, they can quarantine at home. If they are travelers, we originally had it that they have to be quarantined in a government quarantine facility. Later on, when everything started exploding and having lots of hot spots, meaning the United States started getting really all the hot spots coming in, and we're getting travelers from everywhere, we wanted to ensure further containment of the spread of the infection. And so we didn't know if they're, local residents or non-residents that have the infection. So we moved toward a more stringent type of containment because we wanted to ensure that our numbers are contained. And so what we did was we moved all the people, whether the residents or non-residents, into this facility called the quarantine facility. They have to, however, sign, a voluntary agreement. And we had some passengers that didn't want to sign it. And of course, the only rule that with my power as a public health director to contain any infection from further spreading and becoming a threat to the public is for me to have that power to say, okay, you don't want to voluntarily quarantine, then I have to invoke involuntary quarantine. And that's where I had to appear at court, because those passengers from the Philippines and any other passengers coming at a certain time, especially at that time it was the Philippines, was a very hot spot. We had to implement that right away to contain it. And so I had to go to court, and I had so many listing of passengers that didn't want to, sign a voluntary agreement. And so we had to revert to involuntary. So my role as the director is I need to notify the court, let them have a listing of all the passengers, where they're staying at, what room at the hotel, and so forth. So we did all that along with the AG. We coordinated all that, and then I appeared in court, as you already all know, and I had to answer the questions for 1 whole hour that they asked me. What about some people that are in quarantine that, let's say, they live in Guam? Do you have any other exemptions that you can put in place? And so I told the judge that yes, we had cases where a lot of the passengers at that time wanted to come from Philippines because they wanted to come back because they're going to shut down the whole airline industry from the Philippines. So they all wanted to come back, and so some of them came from St. Luke's. Quite a few of them had just surgery, and so these passengers were some of the people that we have to take into consideration, because we know that exemptions can be made if they have like comorbid conditions, something like, hold on one second. And so what we had to do was we had comorbid conditions, we had issues of that nature. There are exemptions that I told the judge that can be made, such as behavioral health issues, and there's certain criteria that we do have in place, and I did explain all that to her. And then she said, okay, I just want to know that. So I explained that to her. So there are conditions that we do look into that they can allow them to go to home, to self-quarantine. So that's what happened, Senator. And now that we're trying to get back into controlling all the, the airline industry is going to open up again. So we cannot scale down the quarantine and the isolation at this point, because what the judge also asked me, are there anybody in the quarantine that ended up having COVID positive cases? And I told the judge, yes, ma'am. We ended up seeing several passengers that tested positive. What happened was they some of them don't even have symptoms. We had one passenger that just had the loss of sense of taste and smell, and he was the one that was complaining the most. He was really belligerent until he found out he was COVID positive. His whole attitude just was a 360-degree turn. And, then he realized, oh my gosh, I realize now what you're doing, and I really appreciate it. He was giving us the hardest time. The reason why we do that quarantine is because the incubation period when somebody is infected or exposed, there's exposure of 2 days to 14 days. And during that time of the incubation period, they may exhibit symptoms. And usually if their testing is going to be done, we test the person. Usually the virus will appear in their test. If we test too early, it may not show. If we test later, there's a time frame to show. And so we don't want to have any false negatives. And so having said that, I hope you understand the importance of enhancing our quarantine and enhancing our isolation. And today, a lot of people are still going to the quarantine area, and we're still seeing positive case. We had a positive case, and we knew that was identified because there was a positive individual that traveled, and we had to test all those people in the same aircraft that came with that passenger in the quarantine area. So that's what I'm trying to say. We look at cases individually, and we see if the home is sufficient for quarantine or isolation. If it's not, then they will be moved to the government of Guam isolation if their home is not sufficient. And so I hope that answers your question, Senator. I know I'm trying to be as detailed as possible.
If they took the test 72 hours prior, would that
I'm just
get them out
recycling
of
the
quarantine?
Yes.
I'm not, someone's here.
Huge. I cannot hear.
My fault. I'm sorry. Okay. Senator Taitigui, you're recognized.
Masi, Madam Chair. Linda, I'm kind of confused, on what you explained your role is as the Director of Public Health and as pertained to Chapter 9, this whole emergency health, state of a health emergency. And some of the things that you mentioned on there, and based on that chapter, it looks like you have a lot more power with regards to purchasing, signing on contracts, etc. But one of the things is procurement procedures that wasn't discussed earlier. As the based on an health emergency situation, you oversee. This is
what I've done so far is the procurement within the Department of Public Health. That's the procurement that I do sign, all the requisitions coming in from the Department of Public Health at this point in time.
So you have no say on any kind of procurement process with like the quarantine facilities, which is a public health issue.
Correct.
So you're saying that, okay. I don't see that. The second one, we talked about the funding of the $397,000 from the 117 million CARES Act funding. Now, it said earlier, if I'm not mistaken, that 700,000 came from local funding and 500,000 came from federal. However, if you are trying to replenish what you've taken out of other departments within your agency to cover these costs, that you're looking at the 397 to replenish those areas. But quite earlier, didn't I hear?
It's doing that thing again.
Here it was $700,000 that was taken out of some local funds. So that's quite shy of 397 that you're going to receive.
Yeah, that remaining difference, right? The 313, which was the difference between the 700,000, the 710,000, and the 397, because the CARES Act, the relief fund, when you look into the provisions and the condition, they only provide for, I guess, replenishment or recovery between within certain dates, and that date was identified as the date the governor proclaimed the emergency through EO 2020-03, and that took in effect March 14th. So the monies that we spent prior to March 14th amounted to 313. So that was how it was isolated. And then
2 million you were
what BBMR did is they diverted that to testing. So it's still being provided to us, but not in the fashion identified with the 397.
I see. So you plan on any other expenses like test kits or anything as far as employees that you may need or hire additional employees? So you're banking on Department of Administration to be able to fund your agency instead of directly going after this CARES Act fund? You know, from what I heard through the budget, every department and agency provided their basically wish list or what they needed for this pandemic. And things were agreed to, like DOC was given extra money, you know, to provide a separate facility from the other inmates in case someone is infected, an example. BBMR asking for these cases, these computer cases. So what is Department of Public Health and Social Services provided to BBMR for their request as part of the CARES Act, other than the 397 that you're looking at? And we're not just talking about today or past expenses, but we're also talking about in the next month or so. Considering there might be some testing at the airport and utilizing individuals who come, who will be able to provide those tests to them. Things like that.
Yeah, I think right now the need, you know, we base it upon what our actual expenditures were, and that's where Tommy got that information as far as what we had submitted in terms of our procurement within the department. Bear in mind that when this pandemic occurred, we had to also get assistance from other agencies for nursing functions and also for courier functions. And so we were banking on getting that assistance, like through the DOE nurses and the GCC nurses, and we tried to get as many nurses as we can, and in this regards, and hiring additional staff for that. So pretty much when we started that off, we started, according to Tommy, we used the local funds that we have under our program, right, Tommy?
Yes, so, with the new hires of the nurses and the nursing assistants, we were able to provide through our local funds those funds for the salaries and the benefits. And to date, I've been in contact with BBMR to
I'm sorry, everyone.
Monitor the
Can we go back to my screen? I apologize. We're going to have to cut the stream and come back on. Just give us 5 minutes, 10 minutes to come back on, and hopefully we don't miss the contracts part, the hotel contracts part of the discussion.